Hey there! If you're fascinated by ancient mysteries and lost secrets, make sure to follow our channel so you don't miss this story and all the ones to come. We'd really appreciate your support, so go ahead and subscribe, like, and drop a comment below. It helps us a lot, honestly.
So, we've just made an incredible find. Lost Egyptian symbols that haven't been seen for thousands of years.
They found the tomb of a royal doctor who lived more than 4,000 years ago.
A man who literally held the lives of the pharaohs in his hands.
He knew secrets that only gods and kings were allowed to hear. But when his tomb was opened in 2024, there was no body inside. Only vivid paintings untouched by time and mysterious symbols carved into stone. Who was he? And why was he buried with spells linked to the scorpion goddess? The tomb was hidden deep beneath the sands of Saqqara. The doctor's name was Teti Nebufu. He lived about 4,100 years ago during one of the most mysterious periods in Egypt's history, a time balanced between glory and collapse. These were the final days of the Old Kingdom. The sun still glistened on the freshly built pyramids, but shadows were already falling. Pharaoh Pepi II ruled longer than any pharaoh before him, 90 years. But by the end of his reign, the country was falling apart. Central power was weakening, local rulers were rising, and the Nile's floods became unpredictable. In the middle of this chaos, this mysterious doctor thrived. His tomb was discovered by a Swiss-French archaeological team in the shadow of the pyramids. The strangest part, when they opened the burial chamber, they found no mummy and no golden treasures either. The tomb had been robbed long ago. But what remained was even more fascinating, the words and paintings on the walls. The murals were still bright, painted in colours that somehow survived thousands of years underground. The walls showed jars, containers, abstract patterns, and geometric shapes. Then came the hieroglyphs, lines of sacred text carved with such precision it was as if the artist poured his soul into every curve. These inscriptions revealed who Teti Nebufu really was.
He wasn't just a doctor, he was a priest of Serke. Serke was the scorpion goddess, both sacred and terrifying. Egyptians believed she could stop venom, heal bites, and protect people from deadly poisons. Being a priest of Serke meant Teti specialized in treating dangerous stings and bites. With his own grand tomb, he may have been Egypt's leading expert in this field, a healer who used both medicine and magic. But that wasn't all. He also carried the rare title Director of Medicinal Plants, a title mentioned only once in all of ancient Egypt. This means he had unmatched knowledge of the healing powers of herbs, roots, and oils.
Now you might be wondering, plants in the desert, but the Egyptians actually had a rich herbal medicine tradition, some of which survives in labs even today. They made pills, ointments, and inhalers. Usually they picked an active ingredient, added flavour to make it easier to take, and something to carry it into the body. Sound familiar? Exactly like modern medicine. Of course, some ingredients would shock us today, like mixing crocodile dung with honey, or using acacia as treatment. They even had recipes for anti-wrinkle creams.
And it turns out our mysterious healer was also a chief dentist. That title is rarely found in Egyptian records. Evidence of dentists is extremely scarce. But in ancient Egypt, dental problems were huge. Their food often contained grains of sand, and they ate a lot of hard bread and raw vegetables, which wore down tooth enamel and caused painful decay. They had to improvise. The world's oldest known toothpaste was a mix of crushed rock, mint, and pepper, which actually hurt the gums more. Another recipe used eggshells, peas, and natron, a salty mineral used for cleaning. They even made mouthwash from celery, bran, and herbs. Some mummies were found with primitive braces and golden wires holding teeth together. We don't know if these were used while alive or just symbolic offerings for the afterlife.
So Teti Nebufu was no ordinary man. He held 3 rare titles: Priest of Circe, Director of Medicinal Plants, and Chief Dentist. He must have been admired in his time for his extraordinary knowledge. In a world without modern science, he would have seemed like a magician, a man who knew how a leaf, a root, or even tree bark could save lives. That's why archaeologists believe he wasn't just a doctor, but probably the royal physician who treated the pharaoh himself. Maybe even Pepi II, who knows? Maybe that's why the king lived so long. If that's true, then Teti Nebufu witnessed the last days of Egypt's old kingdom from inside the palace walls. Then he was buried, his body stolen or lost to time. But his tomb still speaks, and archaeologists are still uncovering clues about his remarkable life.
The truth is, ancient Egyptian medicine was way ahead of its time. They had hospitals, specialists, surgeries, and even medical schools. Both men and women could be doctors. They treated wounds with real tools, scalpels, forceps, surgical threads. They cleaned and dressed injuries, set broken bones with wooden splints wrapped in linen, and even built prosthetics. The oldest known artificial toe, made of wood and leather straps, helped someone walk again 3,000 years ago. And here's the shocking part. They even tried removing tumors. A recent study examined a 4,000-year-old skull belonging to a man in his 30s. It showed signs of tumors and surgical cuts made with a metal tool, suggesting someone tried to remove or study them. Another skull from a woman over 50 showed similar signs, plus healed fractures, meaning her treatment actually worked.
To be a healer back then meant being a priest, a scientist, and a magician all in one. Medicine was sacred, treated with the same reverence as their gods, because to them illness could be both physical and spiritual. A doctor might chant a spell while applying a salve, and often it worked. Egyptian doctors were so respected that rulers from other lands like Persia sent for them. Even Homer, the Greek poet, once said Egyptians were the best healers in the world. Of course, they didn't understand everything. They thought the heart controlled thought and emotions, and they didn't know the brain's true function. But their approach, observe symptoms, diagnose, treat, was basically the start of modern medicine. Their most famous doctor was Imhotep. He was a true genius, an architect, priest, and healer, so brilliant that he was later worshipped as the god of medicine. He lived 2,000 years before Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine. Some even joke we should take the Imhotep oath instead of the Hippocratic oath. These weren't just the builders of pyramids, they were laying the foundations of healthcare itself.
That's hieroglyphs. You can still see them carved on walls. It was the formal, official way of writing. But the Egyptians had another script too, hieratic. They mostly used it when writing on papyrus, that early thick version of paper. Later it evolved into demotic, which became the most common writing system in ancient Egypt. Then in the 4th century BCE, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. That's when the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty ruled. You've probably heard of their last ruler, Cleopatra. During her reign, Egyptian and Greek scripts were used side by side. Eventually they started blending, and by around 100 CE, a new language, Coptic, appeared. It slowly replaced the old writing system. For about 200 years, only priests still used hieroglyphs. Then their meaning faded into history, though not forever.
The first people to try solving the mystery of hieroglyphs were Arab scholars. Medieval travellers came across these strange symbols and wanted to understand them. They spoke to Coptic speakers and even translated Greek and Latin texts into Arabic, trying to crack the code. Later, during the Renaissance, Europeans also became fascinated by ancient Egypt, but they didn't get it right. They thought hieroglyphs were just mystical symbols, not an actual written language.
That all changed in 1799. Napoleon had just marched into Egypt. His men were building a fort near the town of Rosetta, modern Rashid, north of Alexandria. Inside one wall, they discovered a stone slab, black, granite-like, about 40 inches tall and 30 inches wide. This was the Rosetta Stone. It had 3 different scripts carved on it: hieroglyphic, demotic, and ancient Greek. It was part of a larger stela, a stone monument usually dedicated to a person or event. But this one was damaged. The top hieroglyphic text was 2/3 gone. The bottom Greek text was missing some key lines, but the demotic section in the middle survived almost perfectly.
The stone eventually ended up in the British Museum, and scientists across Europe scrambled to decipher it. Copies and imprints were sent everywhere. Since they already knew Greek, people assumed it would take only weeks to solve. Instead, it took 20 years. Why? Because the spoken Egyptian language was gone. Scholars had no clue what sounds matched the hieroglyphic symbols. Imagine if English vanished, and 1,000 years later someone found the word dog carved in stone. They wouldn't know how to read it or what it meant. That was the problem with hieroglyphs.
The first big breakthrough came from Thomas Young, an English doctor and physicist. He noticed that the name Ptolemy appeared several times in the Greek text. Since it wasn't an Egyptian name, the Egyptians couldn't write it as a single picture. They had to spell it out phonetically with symbols. That was the key: phonetic writing. Young studied the oval-shaped name rings called cartouches and figured out one spelled Great Ptolemy. That meant some hieroglyphs represented actual sounds, not just ideas.
Then came Jean-François Champollion, the French linguist who finally cracked the code in 1822. He spoke Coptic, which was crucial. He realized certain hieroglyphs matched sounds he already knew from Coptic. His eureka moment came while studying a temple inscription of Ramses II. He spotted repeating symbols, worked out their phonetic value, and suddenly it clicked. Hieroglyphs were a true written language.
The Rosetta Stone itself was a decree from Memphis, written in 196 BCE by priests declaring loyalty to the pharaoh. The actual content wasn't the big deal. The breakthrough was that Champollion gave ancient Egyptians back their voice. For centuries, Europeans had thought Greek and Roman culture came first. But once hieroglyphs were readable, it opened up an entirely new chapter of human history.
Fast forward to 1922, Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings. The world was stunned by the golden mask. But without Champollion's work, no one would have even known the name Tutankhamun. Hieroglyphs spelled it out phonetically. The chick for the vowel U, the Ankh sign, the crook symbol for ruler.
Nearby excavations revealed even more treasures. Necklaces with amethyst and agate beads, copper mirrors, one shaped like a lotus, another decorated with Hathor, goddess of women and love, and even everyday objects like toys, scarab amulets, and archers' bows. Archaeologists also uncovered fragments of Queen Hatshepsut's temple, hidden for millennia. She was one of the rare female pharaohs ruling with wisdom and strength. More than 1,000 decorated blocks were found, giving us new insight into her reign, but not everything survived untouched. Over the centuries, tomb raiders got there first, taking many valuables. Still, what was left, amulets, pottery for offerings, even early dental tools, painted a vivid picture of daily and spiritual life. And of course, the legends of the curse of King Tut began after several of the tomb's discoverers died mysteriously, but modern science suggests it wasn't magic at all. It was probably exposure to radiation or toxic mold inside the sealed chambers. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. We really appreciate your time and curiosity. If you enjoyed this journey through ancient Egypt, please follow our channel and keep an eye out for future videos. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment.